Greetings, Saints. This is your rector, the Reverend Tom Stramick Jr. I'm here in front of our church sign to hopefully you can read that. Hopefully you can read that says, Jesus came to serve, act, and vote accordingly. And I decided upon that wonderful phrase because this coming Sunday at our gospel lesson is Jesus talking about coming to serve people and not to be served. And I thought it was a wonderful thing to highlight, and especially now that we're in the middle of voting in Oregon. Ballots, I think, went out a day or two ago, so you should be getting yours any day. And we're not partisan here at All Saints, and we're also not supposed to be partisan as a 501c3 nonprofit, and so we won't be. But I think it's worth thinking about the leaders we want and the leaders that we prefer, and to do that, to think about who is, at least in our view, both acting and putting policies in place that are more what we believe Jesus would be doing, and acting more like how Jesus would be acting. So I'm walking back into a fairly echoing hallway and walking back into my office. But more than voting, I think it's worth thinking about what Jesus was actually doing and saying in his discussion with the disciples. And the disciples continuously talk about who's the greatest in the kingdom of God, and who's first in line, and things like that. And Jesus is basically saying to them that that the kingdom of God upends all of the earthly things about power. That Jesus' very presence in front of the disciples is a testament to the fact that God, the Creator, gave up all of God's power in order to come to earth as Jesus, and then was allowed himself to be mocked and scourged and dragged to a cross and killed in human form in order to bridge the gap between humanity and divinity. And when you think about the creator of the world, the all-powerful God, coming in human form, dealing with all of the human challenges, all of the human difficulties of having a body, and I'm guessing Jesus would trip over things, and Jesus would fall down occasionally, and Jesus would hit his head on doorways and things like that. All of that stuff was things that God didn't have to deal with, but God as Jesus did. And in Philippians it talks about the fact that Jesus did not count equality with God a thing to be grasped, but humbled himself even to death on a cross. And so, I don't know if you remember growing up, and your dad or mom would ask, would you please take out the garbage, or will you please do this, or will you please do that? And occasionally at my house, the refrain would be, well, that's not my job. That's not my job. It's somebody else's job. And more often than not, the response would not be, oh, yes, you're right, of course, I'll ask that person. It's, well, I asked you to do that, and so I'm expecting you to do so. And I think it's very often the case as human beings that we say, well, it's not my job to save the world. It's not my job to do X. It's not my job to do Y. And I think what Jesus often says to us is, step back from what you think is your job or isn't your job, and go and do the work that I have given you to do, and love the people I've given you to love, and give generously to the people that I've asked you to give generously to. And so I think it's worth thinking about and talking about and being about what God has asked us to do and who God has asked us to be, whether we're in the voting booth, in our case in the voting table, whether we're at church, or whether we are out in the world doing whatever we need to be doing. So I encourage you to think and pray about that, and maybe think and pray about where God is calling you and what God is calling you to do next, as we also think about where God is calling all saints to do, to be, and to do in the next weeks, months, and years. God bless, and I will see you on Sunday.